Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Round Lake Area School District Board of Education on November 7th, 2022 at 7:17 p.m. If I can get started first with a roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley?
Here.
Mr. Francisco?
Here.
Mr. De Vera?
Here.
Miss Lee?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mrs. Klingler?
Here.
All right, and our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up we have an agenda in front of us. If I can get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Miss Lee. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. De Vera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
And we have an approved agenda. And first up on it is special recognition and presentations. And we have the Round Lake Exchange Club Youth of the Month. And who is doing our presentation on that?
Good evening, everybody. Principal Peterson's not feeling well, so I am filling in for him. The Round Lake Exchange Club Youth of the Month for October is Lily Burton. I could talk a lot about how awesome she is, but here's just a few of the highlights. In her high school career, Lily has never earned a grade lower than an A, and that is while taking honors and AP classes exclusively since her freshman year. I think, was it 4 AP classes right now? Where are you? 4? Yeah, just 4 AP classes right now. She was also recently named an Illinois State Scholar. Lily has also been a member of a varsity sport every single year, every single season of her high school career. She just last week was named to the NLCC All-Conference team for volleyball. She is a returning team captain on our girls volleyball team, where she will be a 4-year starter. She has been All-Conference in basketball each of the last 2 years. Last year, she went out for varsity track and promptly broke the school record in the triple jump, and has been named Student Athlete of the Month multiple times over the years. Then in all of her free time, she also volunteers at volleyball youth camps. She volunteers heavily with Grow the Game, mentoring elementary students interested in basketball. She tutors in physics daily during her lunch period. She's a member of National Honor Society and Panther Crew. So it's my distinct pleasure to present the Round Lake Exchange Club Youth of the Month for October, Lily Burton.
Growing up, I always thought I needed a father figure in my life. I longed to play catch with my dad and was jealous of my friends who would hug their dad after hitting their first home run. I wanted to look up into the stands and see his smiling face. I wanted to see that he was proud of me. However, this never happened. He was always working, and after my parents got divorced, he rarely made contact. He was the person I thought I needed, but it turns out my mom was. My mother never failed to let me live out my dreams. Like it was her only job on earth, she made sure I was happy and loved. She took me across the country with my little brother Daniel to play softball each summer. Just imagine spending 6 consecutive hours with a 10-year-old, then you'll understand the extent of that. She knew softball was a game that meant so much to me, and even though it drained her both mentally and financially, I know she did it to see my eyes brighten on the base paths. She was there for every single game. I don't know how she did it with 2 other children, but she never missed a game. My mother never failed to support me. She knows me better than anyone, and probably better than I even know myself. Before I came out to her, she would ask me if there was anything she needed to know. When I came out to her, she held me in her arms and told me she loved me. Of course, this was followed by her own wish being, I have grandchildren, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Or she has grandchildren. She never batted an eye about my sexuality and celebrated it with every rainbow she saw. She made me feel comfortable in my skin, and I couldn't be more grateful, because I know that's not the case for many people. My mother never failed to fill my throat with laughter. During late school nights after I finished my endless pile of homework, we would play our favorite game, Rummy Cube. Even though it consisted of just numbered tiles, it got pretty competitive between the both of us. Yet despite trying to beat each other, every game ended with a laugh. We would mock each other's moves and joke about how long we took to take each turn. My stomach would hurt from the laughter at the end of it. After a day filled with stress and anxiety, I could always count on a smile because of my mother. My mother never failed to be what my dad couldn't. She was the person who stepped up during the times that I felt a hole in my heart due to his absence. With every hug and every question about my day, she began to fill that hole. I did not need another person or another parent because she did more than enough for two. I know it seems impossible for anyone to replace two, but she did it by being the most selfless person on this planet. She will do anything to put a smile on my face and make every day better than the last. This is not only something I admire, but something I want to emulate to every person I pass in my lifetime. Like her, I want to be the person that makes you feel seen after every talk or smile I give. This is why I want to become a teacher, so I can make every day and every student feel at home in the classroom. My mother never fails to do the impossible. Every day she takes on the hardest job in the world, being a single parent. I now know that I do not need a father figure in my life because I have a wonderful, supportive mother who will always be there for me.
Dr. Mendoza, I'd be remiss if we didn't thank Ms. Burton. She's one of our bus drivers.
All right, next up is our September Athletes of the Month. Back for a return engagement.
Hi again. This last student was unable to attend our October meeting because she was playing in an away volleyball match. But I'm very pleased to have Areli Gomez here, along with members of her family, to be recognized as one of our Athletes of the Month for September. And here to present Areli is head girls volleyball coach Grace Larson.
Hello, everyone. Areli switched positions this year as a senior from middle hitter to outside hitter, and she did extremely well in this new role. She was completely successful for us. She was one of our best passers, servers, and was one of our go-tos on offense this year. She's not only a great athlete, but she's also a great leader on the court. Not only being our September Athlete of the Month, she was also our effort pride winner this year, as well as a team captain for us. So we're extremely proud of you, and congratulations, Areli.
All right, next up we are to communications to the board, and our first one is our BPAC update.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Just want to share our BPAC committee meeting. We had our second official meeting last Friday via Zoom. We have the opportunity to learn about Round Lake Public Library programs and resources, as well as Round Lake Area Schools Library resources. Also, we had a schedule out for this Friday, November 11, our mental health program from 6 to 8 p.m. at McGee Middle School. This year we have two presenters, psychologist Dr. Fernay Ramirez will be presenting in Spanish, and Mr. Dane Cruz will be presenting in English. I hope you can join us. This Hispanic Heritage Celebration was a huge success. We had about more than 600 people. I just want to take this opportunity to thank sorry my English, I'm a little nervous, to thank all the teachers, families, administrators on the board and board members. During this event, we came together as united community to celebrate our diversity on the community. Thank you for your time.
All right, and our second update is from our Round Lake Education Foundation.
Good evening. My name is Jeannie Kirby, and I'm here representing the Round Lake District 116 Education Foundation. Our president, Judy Armstrong, was unable to attend this evening, and so she asked me to update the board on what is going on with the foundation. The first thing we wanted to let you know is that we have 3 new board members. We've appointed Jerry Dietz, Denise Valdivia, and Charlie Durantes to be on the board for District 116 Education Foundation. The other major update we've had is over the summer we've completely revised our grant structure, and we've looked at the application, we've looked at the categories, we've updated all the amounts that each category can get in order to bring as much to the process as possible and to make sure that every one of the grants is evaluated on the same guidelines. Through major efforts, everything will be done online. We've also included a reporting structure that we've never had before, and we're hoping that will make it easier for us to highlight and brag about all the things that we're doing in the district. And also, we've managed to include a budgetary function that is also online, which will give whoever applies for a grant the ability to put in a budget prior to its being accepted. We have had one evaluation for grants under this new structure, and the feedback from the committee has been very positive. We have 3 community members that are on the Education Classroom Grants Committee, and I'm the chair of the committee. What I have for you this evening is I have a packet for you. It is the annual review that we presented to the foundation, and also all the grants that we have we've given out since 2019. So, Mary, can I ask you to help me with this? I'm very pleased to announce the first round was completed in October, and we approved 3 grants, 2 of which would be funded through the foundation, and 1 is funded from an anonymous outside source. We have had 2 consecutive sessions where we've had an outside donor that would like to remain anonymous that has funded a grant that is in line with what they feel is essential components of schools. So that is for your edification. And then the other thing that we wanted to announce is we are also planning a celebration of excellence, and we're really excited about this. We're going to be having this at the end of the year, and I'm giving you full warning so that you can pay attention to all your social media and all the web pages as we develop the program. And we're looking to highlight all of the excellent work that goes on and all the people that contribute to that excellent work for District 116. I appreciate your time, and as always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact the Education Foundation. And if you have any questions specifically about grants, everybody here probably has my number, so just go ahead and call. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next up is our third communication to the board. Dr. Kivens.
Good evening, Board. As most of us have heard and watched the news lately, the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates. Certainly not good for an individual that might be purchasing a home or purchasing a vehicle or purchasing other items. However, for us as a school district, there is an opportunity for us to invest some additional dollars to bring those revenues back into our district. And so I've had conversations with Annette, Chair of the Finance Committee, for support of an additional $5 million that we would invest, certainly very prudently, watching the market. Market was down a little bit today. It was up at the end of last week. This would be a timely investment. Currently, the Board of Education has approved a $5 million Treasury bill, which will mature the end of December and will yield us $60,489.68. So there would be a little bit of an overlap. It will not affect any of our cash flow or any of our required bill payments.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I did talk to Dr. Kivens, and Finance Committee did discuss and in support of this venture. And we said we would take it a month at a time. Obviously, as we know, Election Day is tomorrow. We'll see what yields and as the market changes moving forward.
Any additional questions?
And just a comment, there's no risk, right?
Correct. There's no risk. We are not able to involve in any type of investment that would be a risk to a district. That's part of the oath I take as your district treasurer, and that's also written very clearly in our Board of Education policy.
And we're not doing any action on this, so we thank you for that update, and we look forward to hearing what we see in regards to the investment opportunity. I think you're up next on the TIF.
Correct. This is just information for the Board of Education, again, in strengthening our partnership with the Village of Round Lake. I was asked to represent the district at the TIF Joint Review Board Committee. There will be no action at that committee. It's just a preliminary conversation. In the past, when I was invited, the Board of Education was supportive of a downtown TIF, and I was just making you aware that I would be attending the meeting on behalf of the district.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing what you gather from that meeting and bring back to us as well. Thank you. All right, next up, we got Dr. Rowling with the 8th grade recognition ceremonies.
Good evening. I'm here this evening to talk about some plans for the 8th grade recognition ceremonies for this year. Going back to my first year in the district, the 8th grade recognition ceremonies were held at the middle schools in their gyms. That was, in some cases, very crowded, very warm. And so, if you may remember, in the fall of 2019, I came to the board and we discussed moving the recognition ceremonies here to the high school in the main gym where it's air conditioned, allowed at the time for more tickets, and a much better facility. Unfortunately, that didn't happen due to COVID, and the 2020 ceremonies were held online via a video, which none of us obviously wanted. In 2021, we came back and we were able to do the ceremonies. We did do them outside. We did them here in the stadium due to COVID regulations, and we were able to provide a couple of tickets for each family. And we were at that point, we were happy to be able to provide our students anything. Last year, As you may recall, our students did participate in the ceremonies here outside wearing their gowns, and it was a challenging weekend. The weather was not terribly cooperative. And so after that, we did get together. We talked about what are the options to try to make sure that all of these ceremonies that happen on the same weekend provide the best experience for our families and our students. And after a great deal of discussion, both at the district and the building level, our recommendation is to host the 8th grade recognition ceremonies here in the main gym on Saturday, May 20th in the morning. The rationale behind that is largely allowing us the greatest flexibility to reschedule the high school ceremony should there be inclement weather again. The experience for those high school seniors is obviously critical. It is, a capstone event of their careers here. We want to be able to have flexibility as we go throughout the weekend. Additionally, the gym here does provide for more tickets and a much better experience for our families. We would be able to give each family 4 tickets, which is what we're giving right now. Additionally, it is air conditioned. Round Lake Middle is not, and so if it happens to be warm, as it can be, that's not always very comfortable. So given that, we will also be having students purchase their graduation pack, so they will get to keep their robe, and they will get to keep, the certificate and all of those things. And that comes at a $29.50 for the entire package this year. So are there any questions pertaining to this?
I don't want to repeat everything Dr. Rowling said, but you're going to see we listed a priority order in there, and the last option is to host it outside on the football stadium. We love the stadium. It's beautiful. I would love to be able to have our 8th graders out there, but if we have them all out there and the weather's bad, we have to reschedule 3, not 1. And again, our focus, our opinion is for that series of events, the focus should be on the high school. We feel like the main gym here is an intermediate step between the middle schools and the stadium. It's not on the stadium, but it's still in the high school. You just redid the gym floor. They still get to come and see, potentially if an 8th grader hasn't seen the school, they still get to have it physically here. And I can't remember feeling as bad as I did when we had what we had last year. There were some positives. The recovery that the team put together with the photo ops, I think we're going to just continue that, whether the weather's good or not, because we think that's just a good opportunity to create some memories. So I just want to be clear, we love our stadium. We'd love to be able to do it. But even if you start looking at doing those on different weekends, now you run into logistical issues about setting it up twice. And frankly, we have we have a good sound system out there, but Dan contracts with a company so that the speaker doesn't hear themselves reverberating there. You now get into running the equipment for a week. So as we thought through this, it's really, we can make all of them work and they would be nice. And in the end, it's your decision as a board. So we just wanted to come early to make sure that we gave you time to talk about it and to assist us in our planning.
And Dr. Mendoza, remind me, we would have the ability to stream using the main gym because we have the Pixelock cameras in there, correct?
Yes. And I think what the other thing we would do, potentially, I don't want to overextend Dan's team, but for example, if a family wanted to bring 10, we might be able to live stream into the theater. Is that possible, Dan? So somebody could come to the events in the theater. We have the new sound system in there, and we'd have a nice, video up there so they could watch it. So anyway.
Well, if you're going crazy like that, then they could also just sit out in the stadium. We could put on the video board.
The communication going to the families regarding the cost, what is that communication going to look like?
Well, generally what we've done is simply stated this is the cost of the, materials related to graduation. I don't think we would necessarily itemize that out unless we got a specific request to do so. But to be clear, this is the cost of the items. There is no markup or overage or anything like that.
It would be social media, multiple emails, Facebook. Kurt would collaborate with Heather to make sure we got that out there really early.
And reiterating they can keep the gowns.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, it is a purchase. We looked at rental options. Quite honestly, the minimal amount of money that it saves isn't worth, not giving that kid that's something to keep, and also having to recover things and things like that. So we did look at a variety of options. We felt this was the best one for the experience for our students.
And this won't change, right?
It won't.
Not unless we get different direction.
Communicate to the board.
That's correct. That's what Kurt meant, I think.
I was hoping so, but I wanted to clarify, because I didn't hear that.
Any concerns from the board? Are you comfortable with proceeding then with our planning with hosting it here in the gym as the primary option?
Looks like I see looks like we have a unified front on that one.
All right, fantastic. We will continue to finalize plans and keep the board apprised of the schedule and all those things related to that. So appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, next up is our 2022-2023 ISB school designations.
Good evening. Excited to be here today. So I'm here this evening to talk to you about the 2022-2023 ISB school designations. So as we move through this, we're going to talk a little bit about what the school designations are and how they're determined. We will talk about how our individual schools did fare in this process, and then we'll look at some of the high-level data that is related to this designation. So essentially, ISB is required to have a mechanism for school accountability that is built upon multiple factors. Part of this process is it identifies schools for additional support for improvement. So there are grant funds that are made available to schools that fall into certain designations to help provide opportunities for school improvement. There are 4 designations: exemplary, commendable, targeted, and comprehensive, and I'll talk a little bit more about what each one means here in a moment. So these designations, an exemplary school is a school that performs in the top 10% of all schools statewide and has no underperforming subgroups and a graduation rate greater than 67%. So that is the highest level a school can earn. A commendable school falls underneath that 10%, but above the 5%, and has no underperforming subgroups and a graduation rate of greater than 67%. Targeted schools, this is where it gets a little nuanced. A targeted support school is a school that is overall commendable. It falls within that range of commendable. However, they have a subgroup performing below the level of the all students rating of the lowest 5% of Title I eligible schools. Those schools will receive some targeted support, and they will receive some funding to get that targeted support. And then there are comprehensive support schools. These are schools that are in the lowest performing 5% of Title I eligible schools, and any high school that has a graduation rate of less than 67%. And those schools also get quite a bit of funding to help with school improvement. Do you have any questions on these designations before we go forward?
Just a comment, the easiest way to think about it is it's a bell curve. It's a normed bell curve. And on the one side, you have the top 10%, and on the other side, you have the bottom 5%, and you have all the schools in the middle. And out of the schools in the middle, they're all commendable, unless you have one group, that has an index score below the overall score of the bottom 5% on the bell curve. So it's a pretty, so that when you see the index scores, and Dr. Rowling will talk about it, if you have an index score is 50.000 or what, zeros, literally you are in the exact middle of all the schools in that group. That's the best way to think about it.
Okay, so just to show, and this is just an image to show the same thing, right? There will always be, regardless of how the schools in Illinois perform, there will always be an exemplary and comprehensive category, and most of the schools are falling in that commendable or targeted group. In here, you can see, if you follow those kind of yellowish boxes, that's an example of a school that scored. If you look at the top where it says Maine Coon High School, that school is the top of the 5% of comprehensive schools. However, in that box there, it shows kind of how that 26.9, if you are in that commendable and you have a subgroup, for example, EL, or I should have put my glasses on, I believe IEP there, that will trigger a targeted designation. As they figure the designation, they use these categories. It is at the K-8 level, it is primarily built around ELA and math growth, and then they have the other categories related to this. It's important to note that it is a K-8 model. Statewide, there are more middle schools that are identified as targeted than any other type of school. And there are a variety of reasons for that, but the same model is used to evaluate Murphy as is used to evaluate McGee, even though they have different grade levels, different setups, a whole different model of education.
And I would just say to that, that was the same way last time. We don't like that. We think it should be different, and I'm certainly not blaming the ISB, but in their mind, some elementary schools are K-5, some are K-6, some middle schools are 5-8, some are 6-8, some are 7-8. Dr. Center had this wonderful idea, and I agree with her. Couldn't you just tag the kids in the grade level? Yeah, you could. So I don't think it's super hard, but this is just the way they do it. But to reiterate what Dr. Rowling says, the biggest cluster of targeted schools in Illinois proportionally are the middle schools. And we think that's because they're lumped in with elementary.
So moving on, this is the evaluation of a high school, and you can see here the composite graduation rate is 50% of that rating, so that is significant. And then within there are a variety of other measures. They don't have a growth measure at the high school level because they only have one required test, and that's the SAT as a junior. So they don't get that year-over-year growth model as they do at the K-8 model. So as we look at the schools, and we'll get into our designations here in a moment, but these are the cut scores. So in the K-8 model, exemplary schools are 82.28 or above, and comprehensive is 31.55. And when we look at the chart at the end, you'll see how those numbers connect to some of the ratings that we have for our schools. The high school thresholds, it's a much broader space, as you can see, but it's 90.93 to be in that exemplary and 9.89 to be in that comprehensive or targeted. The subgroup threshold, so when we start talking subgroups, is 20 students. And when you start to look at the chart, you'll notice that 2 or more races is not listed anywhere. None of our schools had a subgroup of 2 or more races, which means, we just didn't cross that line of 20. So it's excluded simply to make things easier to read. So as we look at our overall designations, this is actually, we believe it's a lot of improvement. When we came here in 2018 and discussed the initial designations, we had 4 schools that were listed as targeted. At this time, we only have 2. And so all of our elementary schools are listed as commendable. Our high schools listed as commendable. And McGee is listed as targeted with the areas of children with disabilities, EL, and white. Round Lake Middle is targeted with subgroups of children with disabilities, EL, and low income. And it's important to note also that this only applies really to grades 3 and up. So Plevia does not get a designation, EEC does not, and Transition Center does not. So if we look at the chart here, across the top you can see the schools listed, and across the side you can see the different subgroups. And those yellow, that color does not look the same as it did on my computer, but the yellow identifies areas in which we were in that commendable range. And the orange represents areas, the subgroups that fell underneath that commendable range and are therefore targeted. If you look at that chart, there's a lot more yellow than there is orange. So if, you know, as a whole, I think there are a lot of things to celebrate. If you look at the performance of our EL students at the elementary level, those are some of the highest numbers on that chart. If you look at where our schools fell in their overall ratings, you know, many of our elementary schools are 50 or higher, which means they're average or above. And so there are a lot of success points here. We will be looking into those orange boxes, our children with disability, EL, and then low income and white at the respective schools to identify what areas we need to improve in. And we will be in touch with the state. There will be additional funding through a grant called Ill Empower that will help us use that money to do some targeted work within those schools in those areas. Do you have any questions related to this chart?
I do. So, you know, as you mentioned, the children with disability for McGee and Round Lake Middle, those numbers are really low. Will you come back to the board to report out where those deficiencies are and how we will address those?
Yeah, we initially will come back with some more in-depth data for the board. And then as we've had time really to look, you saw the math problem that comes up with the score. So that takes a little more time for us to dig through what exactly that is. But yeah, we can come back and talk about what are some of those key areas and how we're going to use that additional Ill Empower funding.
We've only had the access to the index scores for 2 weeks, 3 maybe. So we just got these and then put the PowerPoint together, but we've talked about that. So yes, we'll bring some actionable plans to address some of the areas that we need to work on. And actually, I think part of what's good, and by the way, I want to clarify, what you're looking at, it's actually green.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So he's referencing yellow, but that's because it does look like yellow and orange up there. But one of the other benefits is you're going to see all of our elementaries specifically have very similar demographics. And even in schools that have commendable ratings, there's some different index scores. So I think we can learn from each other and figure out why, with all things being equal, because we provide the same level of funding in our schools, proportionate to the enrollment, of course. We use the same strategies in the buildings. I think we're very good at providing equitable services. I think Dr. Center and her team have really looked across the board. So I think it's good for us to have these and to have some discussions about what are some of the things that some of our schools are doing that we can learn from in other schools. So,
Because, I mean, the other one that stands out for me is low income, how McGee is meeting that threshold, but Round Lake Middle is not.
Yeah, and that's where the really digging down becomes difficult because you almost have to find the individual students that didn't meet certain criteria. It really comes down to individual student scores in different areas to identify where that difference between the 34 and the 27 is. But that's definitely something, you know, we want to be able to look at that. When we look at children with disability and EL and both middle schools being in a targeted range, those are some programmatic things that we have been working on, and that's why I think we don't have those areas in the elementary schools anymore. Those programs that we're working on are working their way up. But when you get that low income or that the white, that is something you really have to dig down into those individual scores to try to understand. And so once we kind of think we've hit on something, we can definitely bring that back.
Yeah, because I mean, like, I think of myself using, again, McGee with the low income. I think, you know, again, we've made sure our curriculum is, you know, horizontal and everything across for our unit district. But when I look at the two middle schools, something isn't horizontal there. Something is not working in one school versus the other.
Right, and that's, again, the question and the answer I don't have right now that, you know, we are working on is this related to attendance? Is this related to test performance? Is this related to, you know, all of those factors? And so we definitely want to figure out where it is and how we can address those needs.
And we will dig into the numbers, because you could have just overall Round Lake Middle is, I think, I don't know, it's probably got 150 more students, but you could have a 3 or 4 point index score swing on 15 different kids. If 15 kids could affect an index score in this amount. So we're really going to have to dig in, and the only reason I know that is because of the level of detail I looked. Like our high, I can tell you right now, without a debate, every 10 students in this high school that don't graduate affect our graduation rate by a percentage. Every 10. I just know it because we dig in. So we'll dig in. I'm sure there's going to be some themes in there that we'll look at, but we'll definitely bring it back for you guys to look at.
I have a question. One is, I'm encouraged by the Round Lake Middle School's Black and African American students, because I think I remember how there was an improvement, or that was an area of concern not that long ago. But is it also saying that in McGee there's not more than 20 students?
Yeah, and that really comes down to how the students self-identify. And so they may identify as Black, they may identify as 2 or more races that maybe don't, and so how they self-identify is really what drives that. That's not our data, that's the data that the families give us. So, in fact, if you look, you know, it's not until Round Lake Middle and Round Lake High School that we are able to even register Black and African American scores. So, again, those populations are determined by the demographics we get through registration.
And someone could register as former EL, Hispano Latino, and low income?
They can't register as, let me clarify, race and ethnic data comes from their registration. Former EL and EL come from our information. If a student is currently in EL programming or has been recently exited, that comes out of our system. So when you look at the race and ethnic, that is the information we get from the families.
And we don't determine low income either. They don't get to check the low income box. That's a series of indicators that are pulled out of our system.
Quick question. Children with disabilities, is that strictly IEPs or 504s as well?
I believe it's IEP only. I can definitely find out, but my understanding is it is IEP.
So these designations, so they're out on ISB. How are we letting our families know where their school falls? So like when I go to our website, like even our school report card, we don't have a link for our parents.
I've already talked to Miss Bennett. We'll make sure the report cards we'll probably put it within, we got to talk internally, but I think it makes sense to have it in the parent section so the parent can click on it. It takes them to the school report card website. Yep.
Thank you. But so these designations specifically, how are we going to communicate that to parents, or how are we going to use this information?
What do you want us to do? Because we can make the report cards available. We'll take I don't think last time we actually sent a separate email. I mean, we can, or we can put it in the newsletter, potentially. That way it's part of regular communication. You can do that if you wanted as a board. It makes no difference to us.
How long does it take to dig in to find out the next steps of this is why and this is what we're doing about it?
Weeks.
It's going to depend on the number of students in the subgroup, because what we'll have to do is disaggregate all the data, right? So, because you, as, mentioned, you can have a white student who's also low income, who also is, has a disability, right, has an IEP. So you'd have to look, right, and go through that. So we're going to have to look for, but we actually do have a data specialist. That's a position you guys supported, and that will have dig in, and she's really good with statistics. So yeah, she's fantastic. So that should help us, but it's going to take some time.
Because I asked that question because that determines the speed of communication, right? So if you can communicate part A and then say we'll have part B, that's one thing. But if you can get it all, because that would be my question. Okay, that's great. That's fine. Now what?
Yeah, and I've already shared the comprehensive report with our data specialist. And so, I mean, it's hard to say, but it will take us weeks to really get there. And then that also drives how we then spend the funding that the state gives us.
When's the newsletter? Number hasn't gone out yet. When is the anticipated release?
The public release?
No, so when is the newsletter? No, the report card's online right now. You can go see it right
Yeah,
now.
I'm just saying we don't have a link to our, when
Correct.
we're looking at these designations, I'm saying there's no way, we don't have information that points our parents to the report card. We talk about it, but we don't help guide our parents there. That's a different topic on top of this. This just kind of, led me to that. But this, the ISB designations, it is important that our parents know this as well. And you're saying a newsletter, but when does the newsletter go out? Weeks. I think there still should be some form of communication to the parents.
We'll have something out by this Friday. Separate from the newsletter.
That works.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. You're back.
Good evening. I'm here this evening to talk about disposal, one of our favorite topics. So this is a little out of my normal rotation. We are meeting ahead of schedule, but Dr. King over at McGee, in an effort to update his stadium chairs, the ones they set out in the gym for the games, to the new logo and all of the new branding. He is making a purchase of some chairs, and in an effort to allow the community to take part in remembering McGee or some times that they may have enjoyed there, he is looking to dispose of and make available these chairs to the community for $50 each.
We are keeping one though, right? That goes into our kind of memorabilia.
I will make sure he does that.
And I was going to say, as a McGee parent, I want to be on that list that gets that email.
I believe he's planning to communicate that later this week, and I will ensure that all the board members get the same communication.
Thank you.
So will Round Lake Middle be doing the same?
Round Lake Middle does not have branded seats. They have the stadium seats. Mr. Higgs decided not to put the branding on that when they bought them, I don't know how many years ago. So he does not need to replace this at this time.
Okay. You know me, equity.
Hearing no additional questions about the disposal of chairs, thank you very much. Next up are the review contracts under 1,000. Everything was detailed there. Does the board have any questions? Hearing no questions, then we will move on to public comment. Members of the public may participate in public comment during regular board meetings by attending in person or by submitting an electronic public comment form. Please note that speakers are limited to 3 minutes in time. Electronic public comments will be accepted up until noon on the day of the regularly scheduled meeting, and the public commenter will be contacted to confirm identity. Once confirmed, the electronic public comment will be provided to all board members in written form. A link to the electronic public comment can be found in the detailed packages. We did not have any electronic public comment this cycle. Do we have any public comment here in our presence? None? All right, hearing no public comment, then we will step next to the superintendent's report and comments from Dr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Board President Francisco and Board. Consistent with board protocols, I'd like to call out the donations recently made to Round Lake area schools. Anna Zambrano donated school supplies, backpacks, and PE materials to Beach Elementary. Meyer donated plastic bags for the book fair at Beach. Meyer also provided a $900 gift card to Village Elementary School. And Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories donated $200 to the Village Elementary School. Please join me in congratulating Liz Dampf. Liz, stand up so we can embarrass you a little bit, please. Director of Professional Learning, for authoring an op-ed that was published in ASCD and Educational Leadership in October of 2022. Liz's article, It's About Skill Set and Support, Not Sainthood, is available here, so you have that link. If you're not aware, that's a pretty big publication. Like, it's a really big one, so congratulations to Liz. We're pleased to share that through the partnership with the Round Lake Public Library, we were able to incorporate the issuance of library cards to Round Lake Area School District 116 students into the school registration process this year. Library Executive Director Jim DiDonato reported that as of September 30th, a total of 5,363 new library cards were created for our district students. Thank you to the library, media, student services, and the teaching and learning departments for working to solidify this opportunity for students. The second of 4 bilingual parent advisory committee meetings was held on Friday, November 4th. You heard Mr. Casas talk about that. A representative from the Round Lake Public Library shared resources available to students and families. Additionally, Sarah Fontana, Teaching and Learning Coordinator for ELA, reviewed online resources made available to students and families on the district website. And for your convenience, I've included a list of upcoming events. And last, but certainly not least, I've got my little system here, hold on. So Tuesday, November 15th is officially School Board Member Appreciation Day. This evening, we'd like to formally recognize our Board of Education for the unending support, vision, and dedication they bring to the Round Lake area school community. School Board Members Day is an occasion to recognize board members who serve as unpaid volunteers for the benefit of the students and community. They act as the frontline educational advocates, providing a local voice and vision for the district by putting in place the educational priorities of area residents. Being a school board member is not always easy, and some of our community may not know that it is a volunteer role. School board members are elected to sit in trust for their diverse communities, and in that capacity are charged with meeting the community's expectations and aspirations for the public education of their children. School board members are entrusted with the guardianship and wise expenditure of scarce tax dollars, and they are responsible for maintaining and preserving the buildings, grounds, and other areas of the school district that the community has put in their trust. School board members are responsible for providing leadership that ensures a clear shared vision of public education for our schools, that set high standards for the education of all students and requires the effective and efficient operation of their districts. School board members adopt public policy to give voice to that leadership and employ a superintendent to administer policy, and are also responsible for the regular monitoring of the district's performance and compliance with state policy. School board members selflessly volunteer countless hours to public service with no compensation. Decisions made by school board members directly impact the quality of life in their communities, placing them as the front line of American democracy. I feel sincerely fortunate to work with this group of 7 outstanding people. I sincerely appreciate all of the support you continue to provide me as your superintendent of this exceptional school district. Collectively, our school board members carry approximately 54 years of school board member experience. At this time, I'd like to recognize each of you individually. Michael Francisco, Board President, 6 years of service. Peg Larson, Vice President, 10 years of service. Annette Negretti McGinley, Secretary, 17 years of service. Kevin DeVera, 9 years of service. Scott Jewett, 5 years of service. Jennifer Klingler, 6 years of service. Julie Lee, 1+ years of service. So on behalf of the district administrative team, would like to sincerely thank you for your governance, your leadership, and your guidance. Tonight's dinner is simply a small token of our appreciation, and we also believe there's going to be a Land's End order coming soon, so we'll get to pick something out of there. But I personally will tell you that I view this as a partnership, and I feel really humbled and lucky to be working with a board that takes their craft seriously, that takes it professionally, that is engaging at the local, regional, and state level. And so we just all want to thank you. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. And next up, we have committee reports, and first on that is Community Engagement Committee update.
All right, today during the community engagement report, community engagement meeting, there were 2 primary topics. One was the social media analytics. If you had a chance to look at that, you'll see that the analytics are on 3 main vehicles, social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, because those are still the platforms for the parents in the district, even though the students are gravitating away from those platforms. But they're still the most popular, so that's why they're being reported, the likes and number of posts. If you wanted to dig in to the analytics, there's actually a link that you can see the report that goes to the principals and the building webmasters on a monthly basis if you wanted to dig into those. And for those, they'll have what were the most popular posts, what were the least popular posts, and so on and so forth. There was growth in most of the vehicles except for Twitter. Twitter had almost no effect, even though there is cross-posting when a post is created. What's interesting is the things, which is pretty logical, the posts that have the most traction are usually the ones that are student-related, which makes sense, or features a student. The ones that are less shareable are apparently the ones that talk about the meet and greets and the information loaded. Those, grandma doesn't really care about those things, I don't think. And so there are 2 places that showed the most growth, and one was in athletics, and the other one was in the EEC. So I thought it was interesting. Heather said she's going to dig into why the EEC should be one that shows a lot of growth because they have the youngest students, newest to the district, so on and so forth. But the question is, why not Pleviac, right? So that has the younger, newer students in the district, so we're going to dig into that. That is it about that. Any questions about that? No? All right. And then the next one is about the communication plan for the partner school, traditional school. And so as of today, there was a list, or in the packet there was the plan, and you can see how it's laid out generally, and then more specifically what some of the plans are month by month. That's been updated. If you actually look at the report, it's been updated now that up through November 7th, everything has been completed. Some things to pay attention to. One is The intent is to communicate with staff first, which makes a lot of sense. So by December 8th, each of the buildings and the staff should have been communicated with the intent of the phrase was to dig up some of the rocks and to see where some adjustments may need to be made, or to think about certain things so that we can then communicate with parents starting on the 19th. And then start with PAC and BPAC, and then start to expand that circle out to wider and wider to other parents, and to dig up some more rocks. And then January, February should be to the other larger community. And as far as to update the board, there's actually two types of updates that are going to the board. One is to the monthly to the Community Engagement Committee, and then the second part of that is usually going to be to the board. There'll be an update. So the next one is going to be the 28th. By then there should be some Q&As from those Q&As created from the individual building updates. But in terms of the detail of what that report is going to look like, that's still being determined.
Mr. Jewett, is the board member who attended that meeting, do you feel like the communication plan is satisfactory? Is there anything else we could be doing?
I mean, I think if it was, we addressed it. It was just minor tweaking, and some of it is what's going to get communicated, and how much detail, and how, you know.
Overall, you feel like I've seen the detailed plan. It's feeling good about it. Okay, thank you.
And also, I want to say that it's also part of the process, right? So part of the process, because we had gone into some detail of these are the types of individuals that we're trying to get feedback from, and it's not, and some have already stepped up and said, I'm concerned about this, or that those are actually the people that we want at the table, because we want to hear what are the concerns, where are the concerns, and what are the rocks, right? What are the rocks that we need to dig up and see, okay, how can we handle this? So, yeah. That concludes, though. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Judd? Hearing none, thank you very much. And we will now move into the actual approval and operations of our meeting today. So approval of open meeting minutes.
I need a motion to approve the October 17th, 2022 special meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Abstain.
Mr. DeVera,
Yeah, abstain.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
That motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the October 17th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Abstain.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for the accounts payable report for $1,323,027.00 and the November 7th, 2022 employment report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Larson. Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. DeVera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
And motion carries. Next up, we have introduction of new administration. Mr. Kozik.
Good evening. I am excited to introduce Kim Smith to you this evening. Kim Smith will be joining our technology team as Manager of Project and Technology Support at the end of this month. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kim. Kim earned a Bachelor of Science degree from DePaul University and spent 17 years working in the private sector in various roles within technology and project management. In fact, she played an instrumental role in creating a project management office. For those of us that are nerds, it's really cool. It's called the PMO, and she stood it up from the ground up. During her time in the private sector, Kim earned certifications in computer programming and project management, and she continues to be a certified project management professional today. After 17 years in the private sector, Kim decided to pivot and pursue a career in education. It's that 17-year itch we share. She earned a master's degree in elementary education, gifted education, and educational leadership. Kim has a passion for math and science and has spent the past 11 years in public education as a fourth grade teacher and elementary gifted specialist. Additionally, Kim served 5 years in private education with Northwestern Center for Talent Development, Midwest Torrance Center for Creativity and Diligence, as well as Delight Learning Center, a China-based gifted organization. Kim was born and raised in Chicago and over the past 17 years has lived in Grays Lake with her dog, Angel. When she's not working, Kim enjoys spending time on her hobbies, which includes baking, making gingerbread houses, live theater, and participating in the annual Hike Lake County Fall program. With a unique blend of experiences in technology, project management, and education, Kim will make an outstanding addition to our technology family. I'm very excited to introduce you to Kim Smith this evening.
I had to write this out, otherwise I would talk your ear off. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for this opportunity to join the Round Lake Area Schools District and family. I look forward to supporting the technology needs of the students, staff, and district leaders, and the board, as well as providing project guidance, assistance, and communication to all stakeholders. Thank you.
All right, first up in old business is our comeback from the high-level discussion that we had prior in regards to resolution number 3, firearm dealer location, as listed in the 2022 IASB Resolutions Committee report for the 2022 Delegate Assembly. As a reminder, the one we're Okay. Just as a reminder, the one that we are going to review, again, we clearly stated that we were in alignment with IASB's recommendations on everything except for number 3, which was the local, state, federal relations, number 3, firearm dealer location, which was submitted by Mudline Consolidated High School 120. And their statement of resolution was the Illinois Association of School Boards shall support and advocate to expand and amend legislation of the existing Public Safety Firearm Dealer License Certification Act 430 ILCS 68 to increase a distance a gun store or any retail facility selling firearms and or ammunition may be located in relation to a school, preschool, or daycare facility from 500 to 1,500 feet. the district rationale is in there, and the resolutions committee analysis was clearly spelled out that they do not recommend adopting on the basis of the committee was concerned with the process for exemptions for current firearm dealers within the 1,500-foot radius and who all might fall under the definition of a firearms dealer. The committee understood the point about the trauma that might be caused by seeing gun advertisements from the classroom, but thought a different statement about firearm advertising might be more impactful than increasing the radius for firearm dealers. So at this point, what we need to do is come to a conclusion as to what our board stance is on it, whether we recommend adopting, whether we support Mundeline's statement of resolution, or do we object to their statement of resolution. Long story short, basically ISB is objecting to their statement of resolution. So we're either going to say yes, which would be supporting Mundeline's position and supporting this bill, or no, which is not supporting it as written, which is what ISB is recommending. Did I get that clear enough? Hopefully. So, does anyone want to have conversation again? I mean, basically, long story short, at this point, we're down to just a roll call vote for it. Does anybody have any questions on it? I know, Mr. DeVera, you weren't here for the prior meeting, which actually at that time turned out to be basically a split decision between the 6 people that were there. So it's we'll re-roll through the vote here and see where we all fall.
Yeah, my apologies. That's what I was asking, so I didn't mean to distract you while you were reading.
No worries. No worries. We're used to your distractions. It's a good thing. All right, so then I would say, do we have a motion to read? And let's do the roll call.
Yeah. I need a motion to support the resolutions committee of the recommendation to do not adopt firearm dealer location.
Okay, so for clarification, then the motion is
To support.
do not adopt.
Right, the recommendation,
The opposite of what I said.
yes, but I have to read it.
Okay. So then just let's make sure.
I knew what you said, but
Right.
yeah, it didn't.
So
doesn't
then
go with-
the way that the motion is worded, if you're supporting ISB, you're saying yes. If you're supporting Mundeline, you're saying no.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. No.
So
Maybe.
moved?
Well, wait. I don't think she was finished.
Do we understand the motion? You do, because again, yes.
Yeah, please.
I need a,
Do you guys feel secure with us?
I need a motion to support the resolutions committee recommendation of do not adopt the firearms dealer location in resolution number 3. We're supporting, not adopting,
Vote yes,
then you're
not supporting the resolution.
Right. So moved.
Second.
what did you say,
No,
Don?
no, no, no.
No, you said that wrong.
You said that wrong.
Yeah.
No, you're supporting the resolution to not adopt.
If you're saying
Vote yes.
if you're
Just
If
leave it
you're-
up to me
Yeah.
to screw
right,
everybody
if
up.
you're
If-
if you're
okay.
voting yes, you're voting with ISB. If you're voting no,
For
you're
those of
voting
you
with
watching at home, we
Mundeline.
do know what we're doing, but
So let me just clarify one more time. So please, because this, yeah, no offense. Here's the motion one more time. The motion is to support the resolutions committee's recommendation of do not adopt resolution number 3, firearm dealer location. So that's the motion in support of the recommendation. If you vote yes, again, you are siding with the recommendation from ISB, which is do not adopt. That is yes. If you are not in support of that, then you will vote no.
All right, so do we have a motion and a second? All right. Motion by Mr. Jewett and seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Okay.
Any commentary?
I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
commentary, please.
I was gonna say, what was the commentary last time, or do we need to rehash that at all?
Well, the commentary last time was expanding it to the 1,500. Almost all of us felt that we understood why that part's not the issue. It's the is it really our purview as school board, or should this be more on the local municipality? And then also, what is theoretically what are we really accomplishing by adding the extra 1,000 feet?
Because I think some of the conversation revolved also, because these are more village ordinances than it is school board ordinance. Because the villages are gonna really dictate that.
Right, but this is really more at a village and even a township level when it comes to those.
So Ms. Larson and I attended the delegate webinar last Thursday, and it was a hot topic. Yeah, and sorry, I have my phone. A lot of the concern was more with the signage. That they didn't want it visible to the schools, gun advertisements. So I think the recommendation was to, in the discussion, the recommendation was for Mundelein to rephrase and their appeal to to talk about the more of the signage and the advertisement. However, a lot of the debate was a message to Springfield that we support our students over gun sales.
Any additional conversation?
I think Miss Lee pretty much summed it up pretty well. Like, it was pretty heated at some points.
There was also a concern of how this would affect big box stores that are already in existence, and gun sales from personal homes, to which I also say I care more about the students than I do the big box stores and the personal firearm sales out of your home.
Was Mundelein on the call talking about the resolution?
I don't know that anybody identified themselves as being from Mundelein.
I don't know that anyone identified themselves, period, other than the people from ISBE who were running it. There were just so many people on the call.
I'm just curious, because last time they had something similar, this was a while ago, I don't know if it was the gun or there was something else that was heated. Whoever.
Well, the last one that was heated was literally the gun storage, or it was something along those lines.
I know it's all related.
Oh no, it was the guns on campus, where they were allowing teachers to carry.
Yeah, I don't remember what it
Yeah.
was. The point being that the school who had wrote the resolution, they had spoke at
Correct.
an event. So that's why I was just curious if they were there to speak to their, yeah.
Not that they identified.
Mr. Jewett.
Yeah, so for me, Dollar General is 1,500 feet away from the high school.
It's
Right over on Cedar.
Well, Dollar
It's
General
not
is a
that-
lot further than 1,500 feet away from the high school.
But you understand what I'm saying, it's not that, it's not that
I
far.
mean, 1,500. To
McGee
be
is-
honest, 1,500 feet from the high school, the annex is barely 1,500 feet from the high school.
So for my point is just that it's not that.
Yeah, it's not that much. The difference between 500 and 1,000 and 1,500 feet, you're adding 1,000 feet. You're adding less than a football field.
I think perhaps the rationale is that we have to do increments, because I'm assuming, I could be wrong, and most people would want well, I shouldn't say most people, but the people that are advocating for that would want like a 10-mile radius. Or 100, whatever. Hypothetically.
So what was ISB's feedback and their recommendation of do not adopt? Are they asking Mundelein to rewrite? Did they speak to that at all?
To appeal and maybe rephrase.
And keep in mind, the way that it would work would be, this one's gonna go to the vote this November. That appeal would be to come back next year in the process and to rewrite one, resubmit it, and go through the entire process again with the changes that they discussed. All right, so just as I hate to be the one to do this, but if you're voting yes, you're voting yes to support ISB. If you're voting no, you're voting no to support Mundelein and implementing it as written. That is why we had early voting, to get that taken care of.
But knowing how we vote, we won't know the outcome of this until we get the report back from the delegate at ISB of how the motion actually carried.
Right, what we're doing again is we're making our vote, and then our board will make its vote then, and we'll see what happens.
It's mostly stating that for the audience, but so they know that our vote is not the final.
Yes, we are one of thousands, yeah. All right, I think we are ready for a roll call.
Mrs. McGinley,
I'm going to say yes.
Mr. Francisco,
No.
Mr. De Vera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
No.
Mrs. Larson,
No.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
No.
The motion does not carry, which again, for those trying to keep track on the flow chart, means that as our district is supporting Mundelein's resolution and not supporting IASB's recommendation to not adopt. So we are going to the delegate assembly with a vote to adopt.
So Julie will vote nay when that comes up on the floor.
That would be no, actually, Julie there would vote yes. Because again, ISB is recommending to not adopt, but when they go, you're voting on this as yes or no.
Yes, okay.
So
You'll get a paddle, so.
You'll get a
and they'll
paddle.
tell you too.
It's a little electronic.
Oh, you get
electronic
the,
button.
Oh, it's
right,
electronic
paddles are
now,
on.
yeah.
And I'm wondering if the if we'll go through this again.
We'll print out a yes or no.
Yeah, that's going to be really easy. So, and again, just as a reminder for everyone, Miss Lee is our representative and Ms. Larson is our backup.
And just a reminder, we're agreeing with everything ISB says except for that one.
Correct. We are in concurrence with ISB on everyone except for number 3, firearm dealer location. All right. We managed to get through that one. Next one up is the approval of education technology support aid request.
I need a motion to approve the request for 4.0 educational technology support aids in the amount of $280,057.76, which equates to $70,014.44 each, to be paid out of local district funds.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. De Vera,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
And the motion carries. All right, next up is positive occurrences. I'll open this. Thank you, Dr. Lamping, for getting a chance to meet me over at Calvary Church to see what we've been able to do in regards to using the first floor in regards to our staff that we've been able to move into there. We were able to go look at the second floor and traverse carefully into the third floor. Definitely looks like there we could have some opportunity to expand. We'd need to really look at the options and the fiscal responsibility around that. But thank you for that. That was a great tour. And definitely, if you've got time, get with Dr. Lamping. She's more than happy to walk you through there as well. It is really eye-opening to see how much of that space we are using and how flexible and usable it really is at this point. And definitely and I'll skip ahead here a little bit as a future agenda item. Don, I'm sure you and I can talk about it later, but just seeing what we might be able to do in the way of just looking at if architects or whatnot, let's have a conversation with the board as to what opportunities we may or may not be able to have with the additional space in there.
I have several, if that's okay. I don't have to jump ahead. We had to, we got to visit the Regional Office of Education. This was something that has come into play quite a bit in our, our meetings in the last year or two. And it was just a very positive experience. It was just a totally different atmosphere than what I would have anticipated it being. You have a visual in your mind of how things will go, and it just wasn't like that at all. And I was just so grateful for Dr. Epgar and the time that they took to kind of tour us and kind of give us a different perspective on it. So that was one that I have to shout out to you guys about, because it was just a totally different experience. The other one, and I know everybody's going to talk about it, but the Hispanic Heritage was just beautiful. I was late to it as usual. But it was just a beautiful, wonderful community event. There's just so much history in our community and so many variations of culture, and it's just so beautiful to see it called out. It's so fun to go to it. So I just have to shout that out. And then they did have another actually Hispanic Heritage event the other night at the high school, and I thought that was brilliant too. The kids did a dance routine, and some of the kids that were in the dance troupe with the dresses are also part of our guard team. So there's just a lovely correlation to our art department, and I love that we identify that the culture in our area, and we shout it out and call out the beauty of it. So I just had to shout that out a little.
Anyone else?
Well, Jen took them all, so.
The Regional Office of Education was a different picture than what I thought it was going to be, yeah.
And then, of course, just as a toss it out there, today was the first day of our winter sports schedule. So I know wrestling got started, basketball. Basketball should be getting up and running as well, and all of those intermediate winter sports. So that we have something to do once it gets dark at 3:30 in the afternoon.
If I may, everybody's schedule is very different. We will schedule a specific time for an open house at Calvary, but I know schedules fluctuate. So this just happened to work that I could take Mr. Francisco, but we could do the same thing with anybody else.
All right, hearing no additional positive occurrences, anybody have any additional future agenda items, since I did kind of go ahead and co-opt that? Hearing none there, next up we'll move to approval of closed session meetings.
I need a motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes of September 19th, 2022 special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mrs. Larson. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Abstain.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Motion carries.
Need a motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes of October 3rd, 2022, special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Abstain.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up, I need a motion to convene in closed session as permitted by statute 5 ILCS 120/2 for the purpose of discussing the following. Number one, employment matters, 5 ILCS 120/2 C1. And it looks like that's the only one I've got today.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Roll call, please.
Mrs. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Francisco,
Yes.
Mr. Tavera,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Larson,
Yes.
Mr. Jewett,
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler,
Yes.
Motion carries, and we will reconvene in closed session, so that will end the public events for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for attending in person or online. And as always, with tomorrow being election day, if you have not already pre-voted, please make sure you do your civic duty and vote. You guys have a great evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.